One thing that I want to talk about that's important when I talk about some other students here today, and this is important for you too, is to think about the balance. Did you hear that word before, balance, in music? Do you know what it means? Okay, so I'll tell you what it means. Is that when we have one part that's a melody and one part that's an accompaniment, we want to make sure that the melody is not covered up by the accompaniment. And in this case, clearly the melody is in the right hand, right? This is the main thing. Sometimes bum 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 is a little too loud for the right hand. Can we try and make sure that the right hand is always heard clearly over all this stuff? Can we try? Maybe left hand a little softer. Okay, that's already better. So first of all, you definitely played your left hand a little bit softer. I think we need to do more, but also maybe you need to play the right hand a little bit more, so that we hear it more clearly. So I'm playing very lightly, but a little bit more solid sound on the right hand. Can I try one more time? Okay, good. That was much better. Yeah. So I think that you heard how it could be different, and that's great. Okay, now one other thing is that even within the left hand, even though I said something about, well, there's a melody and there's an accompaniment, as if there's only two parts, the left hand kind of has two parts by itself. It's like the accompaniment has two things. There's somebody going bum bum bum, and somebody going bum 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 bum. If it was like an orchestra, there'd be two people with different jobs. And so I think this note should be a little louder than. See, they're not all the same, right? Can we play just the left hand, and can you make the lower note a little louder than the other two? Not bad. That's already pretty good. These two notes. Can we play just that part once? So just play the second and third beat of every measure. And one of the goals here is how softly can you play it. Can we try? Good. I know it's hard to remember it that way, right? It's good practice to play it that way sometimes, because like I said, they're different jobs. Your left hand has two jobs. They're kind of similar jobs, but a little bit different jobs. Okay, can we play the other part? I think that's how it goes, right? Good. Now we'll put it together. So. Can we try? Good. That's almost great. It's really, really good. I still think that when you played by itself, you were even quieter on that. So. When I played these notes, I'm barely touching the keys. This, a little bit more. Can we do it one more time? Okay, that's pretty good. Let's try, so the right hand, of course, that's easy. Good. by yourself. One Kayla is the equivalent of like 3 or 4 musicians playing different instruments. So that's good. That's one of the things that we have to do when we play the piano, is we have to, one of the words people use is like to multitask. We have to do so many things at the same time. If you play another instrument, usually it's like we have to play one thing. But on the piano, you have to do several things at once. So that's good. You have to, your brain has to be in a few different spots. That was very good. But what we did to get ready for that was to practice the different parts by themselves, and then put them together. How do you want to play that? How do you want to play that? How do you want to play that? And then put them together, right? Okay. Good. Now, the only other thing that I think I wanted to mention about this this piece, which overall was very, very strong, is that I can't really hear those notes very clearly. It's on. I don't know. Can you play just the right hand though? That's the last 2 measures. Oh, I'm in the wrong. Yeah. Okay, so that time was good. What seems to help is if you, first of all, don't play the first note too loudly, and then make like a little crescendo. I mean, it sounds good, but the first note is, we're playing kind of loudly. So the loudest note, yeah, good. So the loudest of these 3 notes is the third note. Good, okay. Now, the other thing is that if you feel like these start like as if they're going kind of like down or this way, right? Can you feel like you're going out, in, bum, bum, bum? Yes, yeah. So if they go if they're all doing, because the thing is on the piano, if you're, it's kind of hard to move that fast, but in fact, even my elbow, I feel like it's down, up. Yeah, do one more time and see if you can feel like your elbow goes down, up. Down for these and up for that. Yeah, good. So you seem to be getting more and more reliable about it. So that's what I'm hoping. Can we go from there with both hands? That's better. It's the dum bum ba ba ba. You're a little slow dum bum ba ba bum bum ba. When you start there, you're fine. But when you start before, for some reason, you play these notes slightly too long or too slow. Since we're starting here, I want to look at one more thing. Can we make a difference between the piano, bum, 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 and then this one is mezzo, dum, bum, bum, bum. So different dynamics, okay? Okay, so that's interesting. Actually, maybe, can we just do one time where we just start there? Last 2 minutes, I just want to hear something. One more time, so clearly. The hardest thing is to be clear. I think you're worried about the left hand, but the right hand, that's the thing we really need. Good. Okay, so make sure that, yes, the left hand is important, but I think that in terms of, like, you know how I said you have to do many things at the piano? Sometimes it's to divide up our brain into like different things we have to be concerned with. I would say 75% of your brain should be on that, 25% on that. Mostly, it's about the right hand, okay? A little bit about the left hand. I didn't really hear the difference in dynamic. Let me try it once, okay? So here we're gonna have piano. Right, so I tried to make a little more difference than you did in the dynamics. So, can we try? Okay, good. It's a really hard place. The dynamics were really good. What I would suggest as practicing it, lots of times we would practice
just the right hand by itself. Sometimes when you practice hands together, but just starting right there, and then can we do one time like that? So you see that I just, to practice, just stopped. So I'm really ready for that. Good. So let's really stop. You had trouble holding your right hand. Okay, can we do one more time? Remember, just to practice it, we're going to stop. Good. Okay. So if you get used to that, that helps you to be a little more in control. So now let's try. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, let me mention just one other thing. A waltz actually. Notice I'm not that even. I'm a little bit going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Maybe I shouldn't make you do that. That's a little too complicated. But can we play a little? You know how we were playing more sound of. Right, you notice that we're doing more sound on the first beat? This place, it's the same thing. Notice how my left hand, the first beat is louder than the other ones. Can you try that? So, bum, bum. Do left hand by itself once, so you can bum. Right, so this note louder than the second and third note. It's not bad. Can you do even more difference? Yum, bum, bum. Good. Okay, good. So let's add the right hand to that button. Good job. Okay, so let's talk about this one a little bit, which, as I said, I recognize that it's a newer piece for you. One of the things that is important is to notice where the composer, in this case Dun Blue Nun, wants you to play legato. And sometimes you lift your hand. So can you connect? All those notes are legato. Just do it right here. Oh, you let go. Can you now? Maybe it's a big stretch. Can you reach from there, from the E to the D? Yeah, you just about could do it. Okay, so if you can't quite do it, maybe you need a little bit of pedal. But what we don't want is. That sound keeps going. Let's see if you can connect it with your fingers, ideally. In fact, I might say that for you, now if you were older and your hands were bigger, maybe you can play the fingering that you played, but the problem is you can't do it legato. So maybe for now, for the next couple of years, maybe, can we try playing that with 5? And then you can reach it without having to lift your hand. Can we try it? That sounds a lot better. As I said, in the future, you might be able to play a fourth finger rather than 5. It seems like right now it doesn't. You can't play it legato, so I think that's fine. You can just do this finger. Okay, now these notes in the left hand. Make sure you hold it for a dotted chord. Sometimes they're a little too short. Can we try with both hands? not going to be here to hold those notes temporarily. Do you notice that you're letting go of them like quite early? Da 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 da. There's no rest between the E and the B, right? Can you see if you can hold it down? Let's try one more time. Much better. So hold it as long as you can. You're right that you have to let go at some point. Da 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 da, but not da 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 da. Right? That's better. Okay. Now this place you had a little trouble with the memorization. So I don't have like the answer for how to memorize things. Usually, what probably happens for you, and this is sometimes for me, what happens is you just play a piece for a while, and you keep practicing and practicing, and then one day you say, let me try it without the music, and it's memorized. That's after you practice for a while. But I think that sometimes things are harder to memorize, and we have to practice the memorization itself. What I find is helpful, if you know that a place is hard to memorize, is to do, first let's pick an amount, not the whole thing. Let's say those first 4 measures. What I want to do is first, let's play it 2 times, just reading the music. But we're going to stop there, okay? Then we're going to do 2 times without using the music, but let's, for now, just read the music, okay? Let me stop there. So maybe it's not only the memorization problem, it's just your fingers don't quite know those notes yet, which is okay. So maybe what we should do, was the problem more in your right hand or more in your left hand? Yeah. So let's practice the left hand by itself. Can we do the left hand one? Same 4 measures with just left hand alone. So let's stop for 1 second. First of all, I don't know, I realize this is not the music that you usually play from, probably. So maybe that the music you have has some fingerings in there, but the fingering right now, you seem not sure. Da, 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 da. This seems fine to do all 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right? Da, 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 da. This is the same thing. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let me see about this one. I'm not sure if this is the best fingering, but it's the simplest fingering. Anyway, it might be a little uncomfortable. I'm just curious. 3, 4, 2, 1, 2, 3. Let's do one more time from there, and make sure you play the right rhythm. Da 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 dee da, da da dee da. Right, some of them are 16ths, some of them are 8 notes. Oh, I see. Go ahead. Your 8th note sounds almost like a 16th note. Da 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 dee da, not da 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 da. Can make sure the 8th note is not. It should be twice as long as a 16th note. Can we do one more time? So that might be the finger. Let's cross this out. That's fine. I'm just writing because I don't know what finger you usually put this. That's fine. Can we go from? So from there. Except E D E D D. You play different notes than what he wrote. Let's not go all the way back there, because that's not the problem. Can we start from right there? notes of that measure? Good. Okay, let's do one more time. Okay, now let's start from here. G, G. Good. Let's do one more time, just to make sure. Good. Okay, so those are the right notes, but your fingering was a little funny. Can you try? I know it's, the thing to remember is put your thumb on G. If you don't, then you get your hand gets a little like has to twist around in a funny way. Can we do one more time? Yeah. So put your thumb on G. One on G. Good. Now, and I'm sorry, it might be different than what you're used to, and I don't know. But I think this will work out. Or you. I think that's the best choice, honestly. Okay, one more time. All just the left hand, but starting from there. Ooh, wait a minute. Make sure the rhythm. Make you play it again because actually I think it's a little hard sometimes to do the same thing over and over again. What we should do is we can get better at that, like if we practice like how can I really concentrate on something like for a long period of time. But if we start to notice like my brain is starting to go somewhere else, like I'm starting to think like, oh, I wonder what happened in the Celtics game last night or something. You know, then it's like, oh, you know, I need to do something else because if we're not concentrating, then it's hard to do it. And I think it's good anyway to go back and forth and say, well, okay, let me do the right hand. But you can see here that the left hand just by itself is tricky. I think you know the right hand better than you know the left hand. So that means that the left hand needs a little extra attention and extra time. I bet that your right hand in general is better at playing the piano than the left hand. Do you think? And by the way, that's true of almost every person ever who plays the piano. So it's not unusual when we have a passage where they kind of have similarly difficult things to do. The left hand usually needs a little more help being able to learn its part. So don't be surprised if you have to spend more time on the left hand than the right hand. Okay, so but once you do that, then I think that's the issue. Then eventually that's why I think why you had some memory problems actually just the left hand isn't as so secure yet. Okay, now a couple of things. If this, do you know what this means? Tempo 1. So, do you know what tempo means? When we talk about the tempo of a piece. Like examples of it would be like allegro or andante means like how fast something goes or how slow. That's what the tempo is. So that's just a word that's an Italian word. It means how fast it is. So tempo 1 means go back to the speed it was originally. There. So what you maybe didn't notice is that this part is a little bit faster. You got faster. And then that means when you come back here, you have to get slower again, so that's the same as that. This you played a little faster, so just to try to remember that it should be slow, just like the way the beginning was. Okay? You remember that? And then one more comment, and is that this is a little tricky to do. All of that is supposed to be legato. Can we try those notes in the right hand? I'm not sure what your fingering is, but let's watch. That's a little hard to reach, right? But okay, but you had a good fingering, so that does make it possible. 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's good. So let's see if we can do that. 3. I would say 3 and 1. Good. And then I wonder, sometimes this happens if somebody, like in your case, that their hand isn't as big as it's going to be later when you're an adult. Is that sometimes people have to leave out a note. Is that what you're doing? This is probably, you can't quite reach that. You want to just play those notes? I'm not sure if that's what your plan is. You're not sure either. Yeah, that's good. So if you're going to do that, let's play all the notes, all of them connected. Good. Okay, good. Okay, good. I think you're doing great. This is a very ambitious piece. for you to play, but I'm sure you can do it. So it just takes a little bit more time, especially time with the left hand.